Good morning, and welcome to TR's webinar, Penetrating the Data Center, the Rapid Rise of SSDs. I'm Allison Crawford, and I will be your host for today's session. TR's focus is to provide business research to accelerate our customers' success, and the information we'll be covering today comes directly from research our computing team has done on the solid-state disk market. We're excited to present some of the findings to you and get your feedback on our information. Before I turn this over to Christian, there are a few action items I'd like to cover with you. First, we will be recording today's session and posting it to the TBR YouTube channel. We encourage you to visit the channel to watch this presentation or any of the others we've posted. Second, we'd like to hear your opinions and thoughts on the materials we're presenting. Please send any questions or comments through the Q&A function or the chat function. We'll address them at the end of the presentation. We'll send the slides to everyone registered for today's webcast within 24 hours of the conclusion of the webinar. Now let me introduce Christian Perry, Senior Analyst on the computing team here at TBR. He has covered the data center market for over 2 years for processor, baseline, PC, and smart computing. His into the operations and competitive strategies of data vendors help our clients improve their strategic go-to-market plans and performance. With that, let me hand this over to Christian.
Allison. Is underway in the data center. Even breaking technologies, the rate of growth for new products in the data center is almost always gradual. But that's not the case with solid-state drives, which are seeing unprecedented adoption rates thanks to their ability to double or even triple the transfer rates of disk storage architectures. With that inherent speed, SSDs are helping enterprises accomplish tasks with efficiency never before seen in common data centers. These benefits are making Flash a prime-time player in the enterprise that's pushing storage away from critical workloads. 25th, May 11th of this year, TBR fielded an online survey of 350 IT decision makers in North America. We studied the current adoption rate of SSDs in data centers, how customers are using the technology, customers' plans for buying SSDs. Despite relatively high prices, SSDs are now in use at nearly 74% of data centers we surveyed. We expect the technology's ascent as a key data center storage medium to continue as storage customers look to improve performance across workloads. And despite SSD's historical reputation as a niche technology, data centers we surveyed are now using SSD products for almost every enterprise workload, including activity, finance, CRM, ERP, development, analytics, and others. This represents an opportunity to drive further SSD penetration into the enterprise storage market. We've found that once organizations try SSD, they are hooked. According to our research, more than 70% of current SSD adopters either will purchase or are considering purchasing more SSD products in the next 12 months. From that industries that require higher performance storage, such as financial institutions and manufacturing, exhibit high rates of SSD adoption. However, SSDs are also in use in many other industries and segments, including government, education, transportation, areas, and retail. The future of continued SSD adoption looks bright because enterprises enjoy such significant speed increases from SSD technology. We expect that storage customers will continue to invest in the technology as part of their standard storage purchases. Today's storage array might look the same on the outside as it did 5 years ago, but a different story when you pop the hood. Now architects are mixing SSDs with disk drives to provide the speed for business-critical processes. Now even all flash arrays that join disk-based arrays in environments that use tiering to send critical workloads to flash and colder data to disk. These are still significantly more expensive than disk drives. Tiering is a crucial element for SSD adopters. It helps to ensure that their pricey SSDs are being used for the right workloads. The concept of caching is also critical to the SSD ecosystem. Primarily, flash components are added directly to servers to provide high-speed cached storage for hot data. This SSD technology has now expanded beyond the traditional storage environment and will continue its outward journey as customers seek methods to increase their IT efficiency. Although the attributes of SSDs that attract buyers, there are certain attributes and workloads that tend to be the most valued by storage buyers, according to our research. Workloads such as productivity, finance, and website operations are funneled to SSDs more often than workloads such as HRM and SRM. Talking about attributes, buyers in our survey tend to value the speed and reliability of SSDs more than reduced power and smaller physical size. You'll know capacity is actually a favored attribute of SSDs. If that's surprising to you, you're not alone. So a closer look at what SSD adopters consider to be the primary benefits of SSDs versus traditional disk storage. In our survey, increased speed ranked as the primary benefit of deploying SSD versus traditional disk storage, with lower operational cost coming in third. Ranked as the second benefit to deploying SSD, in the traditional perceptions that SSDs are less reliable than disk storage technologies are shifting as the technology matures. The DR believes the need for storage to keep up with improving server processor performance is beginning to outweigh concerns around maturity. There in the fourth spot is capacity. Most know that SSD capacity is generally dwarfed by the capacity of disk drives. Why is capacity seen as a benefit here? The possibility is that adopters are heavily using form factors such as PCIe, which is relatively high density and allows quite a bit of storage to be packed in a small area. However, these types of deployments are not inexpensive. According to our research, organizations with smaller amounts of SSDs in their storage environments tend to value reduced power and smaller physical size over other attributes of the drives. On the other hand, organizations with large SSD deployments rank speed and reliability as the top benefits to SSDs. When we look at the form factors deployed by SSD adopters, we found the majority of respondents are using standard drive sizes, such as 3.5 inches and 2.5 inches. That's not a surprise, considering that these sizes are compatible with existing arrays and other computing equipment. A quarter of respondents noted that they use bare-board SSD products. We believe SSD technology is maturing rapidly as data centers are integrating PCIe cards and other internal solutions into existing servers to deliver increased performance to critical workloads. We also expect that adopters will increasingly use these types of flash products, especially as the market for these products continues to expand. There are flash startups that are looking to expand their market presence. Not only will this saturation help to drive innovation, but it will also help to pull down prices in the coming years. SSDs first started making an appearance in data centers. They were exclusively used for business-critical workloads as they were far too expensive to deploy for less critical workloads. However, as SSDs are now deployed by enterprises of all sizes and nearly all workloads, they join disk storage as a general storage medium in many cases. We found that productivity and collaboration workloads are the most common workloads placed on SSDs. That data centers aren't just buying the technology for business-critical work. However, it doesn't mean that SSDs are not still a critical component for important workloads. Finance and accounting workloads are commonly placed on SSDs, as are website operations, CRM, and ERP, according to our research. Web in particular represents a significant area of opportunity for SSD vendors, as website operators look to boost their response times, especially for heavy traffic sites, or sites that experience huge demand spikes through different parts of the year. As expectations for response times becomes increasingly challenging, enterprises will seek faster hardware, such as SSDs, to meet those expectations. Organizations with extensive SSD deployments use the technology primarily for productivity, collaboration, and CRM. But these also garner widespread use in these organizations for development, ERP, finance and accounting, and website operations, according to our survey. TB believes that as data centers increase the size of their SSD deployments, they will be more apt to place a wider variety of workloads on the technology. The tendency of organizations with large SSD deployments to use the technology for productivity applications reflects the increased need for speed in everyday work processes. Likewise, use of SSD for collaboration workloads points to the growing importance of enterprise communications. Research found that enterprises with medium-sized SSD deployments have higher likelihood to use the technology for workloads such as ERP. As with SSD adopters, mid-tier adopters do not place as much emphasis on development or BI and analytics in terms of SSD workloads. This varies significantly from smaller-scale SSD adopters, which consider those workloads vital candidates for placement on SSD. TB organizations with large and medium-sized SSD deployments are buying and deploying the technology throughout their storage pools. Organizations with smaller deployments are using SSD for specific workloads. Organizations with smaller SSD deployments are primarily using SSDs for workloads such as productivity, BI, and analytics, web operations, and development, according to a survey. TB argues that the use of SSD for critical workloads by organizations with smaller SSD deployments will help spur further investment in the technology as customers experience the benefits of faster performance and energy savings. The SSD landscape extends to every major industry, including those typically associated with high-performance workloads. There might be a distinction between high-performance workloads and business-critical workloads. There isn't much distinction to the business, which is constantly looking at the bottom line. Development and test environments need quick results. They're good as SSDs. Hospitals need quick access to patient information, and banks need quick access to customer information. They're going to use SSDs. And if establishments want to deliver product information as quickly as possible, they're going to use SSDs. We find the highest number of organizations with both large and small deployments of SSDs are in the manufacturing and chemicals industries. The highest number of organizations with medium-sized SSD deployments are in healthcare or hospitals. The deployment segments, banking and financial institutions represent the second highest industry in terms of adoption. Today, the primary impediment to SSD adoption has been price, and that continues today. An overwhelming 75.8% of respondents indicated high price as a key inhibitor to SSD adoption when compared to traditional hard disk platforms. Lower capacity was mentioned by 45.3% of respondents as a primary impediment to SSD adoption. Availability is one of the smallest impediments to SSD adoption, indicating customer perceptions around the technology are improving as the technology matures. Consistent with our findings around the benefits to SSD deployment, where the respondents in our survey said that reliability is one of the key benefits. Overall durability in terms of lifetime is still a potential problem in the SSD product space. It appears that customers are experiencing high satisfaction in terms of day-to-day reliability. We believe that to entice non-adopters, we need to show that SSD reliability is perceived by customers as a strength, but traditional perceptions that SSDs are unreliable. And a focus on reliability by drive manufacturers and storage vendors is key to winning data center share over disk-based storage. Non-adopters of SSD to see where they are in the purchase process. We found many organizations are evaluating a fit for their organization. The good news is that these organizations are at least considering SSD and trying to determine how they're going to use that technology. The potential not so good news is that vendors could be doing a better job of articulating the value of SSDs to storage customers. From our perspective, the cost factor of SSDs is outweighed by the huge increase in performance. And this opinion appears to be backed by the large number of adopters in our study who plan to buy more of the technology in the coming year. SSDs does not require a major shift in storage strategies because it's entirely possible to start small with a few drives and work a larger percentage of flash in the storage environment. For example, a company knows what its most critical workload is or what needs to remain quickly accessible throughout the day. It can place that workload or data on SSDs. Even more interesting is that, according to our survey, users aren't doing anything at all in terms of purchasing SSDs. Consider large increases in application performance delivered by the technology, we believe that these non-adopters simply haven't had much exposure to SSDs. As becomes a more widespread inhabitant of the storage ecosystem, that exposure will surely increase. Economy that remains sluggish, IT budgets for the next year look healthy, with most respondents in our survey expecting an increase to their IT spend of at least 5%. Those expecting the cuts to future IT budgets were non-SSD adopters, while the large adopters of SSD indicated that they expect the greatest growth in IT budgets. Because adopters of SSD are more likely than adopters to experience decreasing IT budgets, according to our research, this may indicate that non-adopters have yet to purchase SSD primarily because of price and concerns around the technology itself. We believe that SSD adoption is tied closely to the health of IT budgets. We also believe that organizations with far tighter IT budgets will have a more difficult time rationalizing the replacement of disk storage with SSDs. So moving forward, we see a few items for SSD vendors based on our survey findings. First, SSD is no longer a niche technology destined to handle only the most critical workloads. According to findings, data centers are using SSDs for all types of workloads. The variety of workloads addressed by SSDs in a single environment depends on the extent of the deployment. If a relatively small percentage of SSDs are in place as compared to disk storage, those SSDs are likely to be used for business-critical workloads or data that needs to be accessed quickly and often. As the use of SSDs in storage environments continues to increase, vendors will see a greater opportunity to reflect the technology's maturity and widespread use across workloads in their go-to-market efforts. If non-adopters have lingering doubts about the technology's role as a general-purpose storage component, vendors will leverage case studies and similar content to illustrate SSD's continuing growth as a standard piece of the storage pie. Because SSDs are now used across most industries and most workloads, competition in the storage market is spreading like wildfire. So they're looking to stake their claim in the quickly growing market of flash, but as more competitors flood the market, we'll start to see fewer differences between total selection of products. TB expects that some SSD vendors will find ways to bridge the gap between server-side flash and SSDs that sit in arrays, because when the end-to-end flash connection is made, customers will see massive performance improvements that are seamless. Such advances will require innovative developments on the software side, especially with tiering, and we're already seeing vendors creating unique utilities that shuffle data and workloads to fast storage when it's required and to disk-based storage when it's not. Storage customers want transparent, seamless data handling that doesn't require heavy management. Finally, need to deliver the message that today's SSDs are a reliable option for improving storage performance. Flash components are still perceived among many potential customers as fragile, but our research indicates that SSD adopters are having few issues with reliability. Finding a go-to-market approach around performance benefits continues to make sense, considering the big performance differences between SSDs and disk drives. However, marketing the reliability of SSDs also makes sense and could gain new customers along the way. Wilson?
Great. Just want to open up the floor. We've had a couple of questions come in so far. I want to open up the floor to anybody who has any additional questions on what Christian just presented. The first question that came in is, can this survey address customers in North America? What do you anticipate for SSD growth in regions like APAC and EMEA?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think although the growth in North America is certainly impressive, as we see in the survey, we expect that SSDs and other flash components are probably going to see even more explosive growth in APAC and EMEA, especially where there's a lot of new data center builds. When you look at new data centers that are buying roomfuls of equipment, you often see that they'll strike deals that can help pull down the price of high-cost equipment, such as SSDs. And I think it's also important to keep in mind that new data centers are generally built with high efficiency in mind, and SSDs certainly fall into that mold with low cost of operation.
Great. Next question that came in is, do you see cost on SSD lowering?
Well, actually, since last summer, the prices on SSDs have been coming down pretty extensively to the point where we now see the cost per gigabyte drop quite a bit under $1. If you take a look at the crucial M4 drives, they've dropped around 60% in price since their peak in 2011, and that's pretty impressive. Some price cuts are also happening with other drives from vendors such as Corsair and OCZ and others. And as drive prices finally start to recover from the supply issues caused by the flooding in Thailand, and they are starting to recover now, that SSD manufacturers are going to be aggressive with their pricing to preserve any footholds they gained when hard drive prices were high.
Next question is, how has this rapid growth affected the strategies of SSD vendors?
That's a good question. So not just about selling drives. Flash has created a whole new sort of philosophy in the storage space that sees Flash being built not only into the storage sector of data centers, but also on the compute side with servers. So the message we see among vendors is efficiency. And so we're also starting to see buzz terms such as agile computing and fluid data. With SSDs in the back end and Flash on the front end, the idea is that data is flowing throughout the data center quickly and efficiently and importantly, transparently to the user. There's plenty of work to be done on this end-to-end architecture, but it's going to happen. And I think we're way out from seeing disk leaving the data center altogether. But 5 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised to see some shops using just 2 storage platforms, and that's Flash and tape.
The question that's come in is, which SSD form factor do you see growing most rapidly? Asked another way, what are the growth trends for the form factors shown on slide 6?
I expect, as ESSA matures, I expect to see PCIe and SATA growing quite a bit because we already see vendors put Flash in servers. And that trend is going to continue as you get these Flash pulls that handle hot data. And also seeing Flash pulls actually on the arrays. So you have one big combined pull. Arrays are built out increasingly with Flash. You know, those form factors, 3.5 and 2.5, are certainly going to continue probably the most used form factor. But again, those server form factors are going to grow quite a bit over the next 2 to 3 years.
Excellent. At this point, there's no more questions from the audience. If there are any further questions, we'll leave that function open for a few more minutes. I want to thank Christian for the presentation and thank everyone for joining us today. We've really enjoyed this interaction, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue. Please reach out to either Christian or to myself, Allison Crawford, if you have any further questions. You can follow us on Twitter. As I mentioned, we will be sending out the slides, and if there's any additional questions that once you have the slides, you'd like to set up a conversation with Christian, we'd be more than happy to accommodate those requests. As I said, we'll leave the chat function open for another couple of minutes, and we look forward to talking with you guys all again soon. Thanks very much, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.